Hello, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup, and that is exactly what we are going to talk about in this video today. I'd love it if you would like this video, subscribe if you want to see more content from me. And I'm not going to ramble too much in the intro today, except to say that if you've seen my previous videos, you probably know that I'm currently like a kid in a candy shop. I am trying a lot of indie eyeshadow formulas for the first time. So today we're going to talk about these Glamlite palettes that I recently brought into my collection. And this is part of a series here on my channel where I'm comparing these new to me formulas to what I already had in my makeup collection, some of which is going to be lackluster compared to these, and some of which is, formulas that I love and stand by. I'm just kind of getting to know these new eyeshadows, putting them in the context of my collection, and I also hope that it's helpful or entertaining for you to see these swatched out and compared to a bunch of other shadows. Please ignore my nails. I don't do anything to them except bite them. But yeah, we're just gonna ignore that. I am focusing only on shimmers in this video. So we're gonna be looking mainly at green, gold, and mauve pinky plummy eyeshadows today. Looking at these color stories, it might surprise you to know that I bought these palettes kind of in large part because of these pink tones. So this guy Extra Lit, this one Chocolate Liqueur, which, it's not strictly a pink, but it's sort of in that same like mauve plummy family, at least in my mind. As well as this shade Chilled here in the, oh, I don't think I actually said, this is the Chocolate Martini palette, and this is the Dirty Martini palette, both from Glamlite. That's the outer packaging, if you recognize that. Yeah, so I was really enticed by these kinds of mauve colors. So I'm gonna start by swatching mauves and pinks. Okay, so to start by just comparing these to each other, here we have Chilled from Dirty Martini, Extra Lit from Chocolate Martini, and Chocolate Liqueur from Chocolate Martini. And this Chilled shade, I hope it comes through. It has a green shimmer over top of a mauve reddish base. Oops, oh my god. I'm so bad at staying centered in these overhead shots. I'm sorry. It's very spatially confusing to me. I don't have a good spatial brain. Anyway, yeah, so it has actually a contrasting green shimmer, which I didn't even like realize from the swatch photos. It's really unique for my collection. This is not going to be a dupe by any means, but I will just quickly swatch this shade Ray from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette. One of my favorite eyeshadows. I've talked about it a lot already. Yeah, this has like a similar shimmer to Ray running over top of the mauve base. I'm into it. On the eyes, I find that this is smoother than the other Glamlite shimmers in these palettes, and it also can look crepey when I build it up too much. So I made the mistake of kind of trying to build it up, trying to get like more of a sparkle finish. Did not look good. A little bit sheerer on the lid. It is a really pretty effect. I went ahead and removed that darker plum shade because I want to do some closer comparisons for these two. So the first thing I want to compare is this shade Nearly Natural from the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. I think this is the closest thing. Oh boy, okay. That's really close. Okay, so Extra Lit, I will say, is really special. I mean, for me, every time I wear this, I just really love how it looks. I've worn it a bunch of times. It's super sparkly and it's way deeper almost than I expected. Like, I think the base is deeper than I expected on this. So all across the lid, it's actually really beautiful. It's like a really beautiful mid-toned lid shade for me. So I'm surprised actually by how versatile this is. This shade from Nearly Natural it's one of the sparkliest shadows I own. It's really, really special. So I have to say, like, I'm almost disappointed that they're so close in tone because I love this shade Extra Lit, but it's like nothing can beat Nearly Natural. I just don't want to love Extra Lit any less, if this makes any sense at all. This is much more high sparkle finish. It's got like a silvery sparkle on it. There's differences, like I think this one looks sheerer. This is quite a bit more opaque. So yeah, do you need both of these? Absolutely not. I don't know. I don't know. I love them both. Okay, I now want to compare with another shade very dear to my heart. This is Red Rocks from the Flower Beauty Desert Lights palette. I would say that Red Rocks is a little bit more rosy and almost reddish than these two, which are more pink. The base on Red Rocks, I would say, is closer to the base on Chilled. And Red Rocks is like a little bit more metallic of a finish, although it does also have sparkle. That's how I would describe these Flower Beauty cream shadows. They have like a really intense metallic base, and they also have sparkle in them. So because of that intense metallic base, sometimes the sparkles are going to be less like distinct and noticeable than they would be like in a shearer based shadow like this one. So I think that's the difference, but on the eyes these are still like really impactful. I This is definitely not the same color as these guys, but it's quite close. But this is quite a nice collection because these are all formulas that I'm really into right now, and this is a color that I really love. If this is my collection of rich mauve shimmers, like I have a really special collection of them. Okay, so going back to this chocolate liqueur shade for a moment, this is very warm, very plummy. It's a chocolate brown with like gold sparkles and shimmer. Definitely a plummy purplish base. Very pretty. I don't have anything that fits that description exactly, but I'm going to compare it to, this is like a chocolate brown shimmer from the ColourPop Bare Necessities palette. You can see it's not at all the same level of shiny. I'm also going to compare this to the shade Terra in the Desert Lights palette, and again, this shade is also not very high shine. It's sort of intended to function as a semi-matte shade in that palette. So that I think has a closer tone because it's a little bit maroon, but it does not have like shimmer or sparkle particles in the same way. This is the shade Vanilla Vodka from Chocolate Martini. It's an iridescent gold. I'm comparing this to Time Shift from Terra Moons. This is a smooth, iridescent green gold shadow. I find that the gold shift kind of predominates over the green one. Although in person I can tell that this is a slightly greener gold than this, I think these are quite similar actually, which is interesting because I don't have any other like true iridescent golds. This is the shade Rich from Chocolate Martini. This is Cheers from Chocolate Martini. And this is Just a Splash from Dirty Martini. And this is the one that has like just a little bit of green in the shimmer running over top. You would not know it, but I actually don't like the shade gold. Gold is one of my least favorite colors for eyeshadow. However, I somehow have like a very extensive collection of gold eyeshadows. This isn't even all of them. I should add that guy into the mix. So this is Tea Garden from ColourPop, and I wanted to add this because it's like one of those red-based gold-green shifting shades. I think it's more similar to this Dirty Martini shade than I realized just from looking at the swatch photos and palette photos of Dirty Martini. You can see though it's much less impactful. Let's see what else. This shade from Chocolate Martini is quite rich, so I'm gonna compare it to this darker gold shade. This is Soprano. I've been watching the sopranos recently, and so I'm like primed to say soprano. Actually, I do really love this shade. This is a very like brassy shade. I feel like maybe that's why it's called soprano, like soprano saxophone. But yeah, super interesting like dimensional shade because of the really high contrast between that deep bass and that bright gold shimmer. The other shade that's similar to that is Legend from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette. Okay, yeah, this is quite a bit more like, I would say, orange compared to those brassier shades, but it's not as orange as this one here from Dirty Martini. And I mean, I should say, I like looking at gold eyeshadow. Like, I can appreciate that these are beautiful and very high shine, but I just don't really like wearing it. It just feels boring and neutral to me. Penny. Penny is a much lighter gold. I would say this is more of like a flaxen kind of gold. This is the shade Palm from Earthy, and I don't think that this will really compare because it's a very unique cool toned gold actually, which is why I find it such an interesting shade because I would not have thought that gold could even be cool toned. This is a shade from the ColourPop It's a Mood palette. It's called Surface. And I was actually really ready to declutter this shade, but I watched a video, an old video of Hannah Louise Poston's about this palette recently, where she's using this, and she uses the shade Surface, and she describes it actually as similar to Tea Garden with like a sort of reddish base, although this doesn't have like as much green in it. But I think you can see like they actually do go to a very similar red base. And I think that makes this shade also comparable to this one here from Dirty Martini. Obviously the Dirty Martini shade is quite a bit more impactful. That's a really beautiful shade actually. I'm into that. And I should have mentioned before, but in terms of formula, sorry for the cicada in the background by the way. In terms of formula, like this is my first time trying the Glamlite formula. The shimmers are really good. I've heard them described as really good. They're quite noticeably sparkly on the eyes, I would say. I do think they compare to the Beauty Bay shimmer formula. Overall, I think the Beauty Bay shimmers might be a little bit more intensely metallic in the base. Again, similar to what I was saying about the Desert Lights and Jungle Lights palette, like that can sometimes obscure the shimmer particles because they're just so metallic in the base. But overall, I think the Beauty Bay shades are very impactful, quite sparkly and shimmery. Both of these formulas have that sort of like creamy feel to them. I would say they're comparable. I want to just do a quick comparison to the golds in the Flower Beauty palettes. This shade from Jungle Lights, it's called Amazon. It's a very deep, rich gold, and it's smoother compared to the other shadows in this palette, I would say. Oh, interesting. It does compare to this, although I would say it's brighter and more orange. And then this one from the Desert Lights palette, Soul, or like Soul, like the Spanish word. You know, it's got something red in it because it's in this pink red palette, but it's definitely not as red as this guy here. This is a really interesting shadow. It's like very gold, very red, a little bit green, all at the same time. I love that. I forgot to compare this shade Ganache in with the golds. So I have that swatched right here, and I just compared it to this shade Prefix from the ColourPop Bare Necessities palette. That's a shade I've really enjoyed in the past, but next to Ganache, I mean, like, this is so much more complex. It's got a brown base with a golden shimmer, and it's got like distinct shimmer slash sparkle particles. This is Wanna Go from the It's a Mood palette, also from ColourPop, and it's my darkest, like, quote unquote gold. This one as well, like, I was not excited about at all until watching that Hannah Louise Poston video, and she put this all over her eyes. It's a very satiny pearl, like, kind of, but I think it's like a true satin. Like, it's not just a disappointing shimmer, it's like a true satin. So that I actually have more room in my heart for because I put this on my lids right after watching that video and I loved the way it looked. Like this, to me, this kind of shadow functions more as like an elevated matte shade. So if I think of it that way, I'm actually really excited to keep this shade and to use it more. Okay, here's the shade Happy Hour. I'm very intimidated by this shade. There's something sheer in this base, which is nice. It's like I would describe this as like a warmish kind of lavender slash. The base has a little bit of that reddish quality that you get in like red purple based shades. And then it has this really nice blue shimmer slash sparkle running over top. Really beautiful. I don't wear tones like this very often, but I do have several. I've swatched right here. Mystic and Jellies, both from the Beauty Bay Midnight palette. It's not a tone that I like on myself, so to be honest, I will probably do a big cull of these kinds of shades, and I think that this one could beat all of them out. To finish out the shimmers in Chocolate Martini, I'm just gonna swatch for you this one, Live in Lavish. I don't think I've even swatched this one yet. Okay, yeah, this is a bright orange. As suspected, this is not going to be a shade that I get a lot of use out of, to be perfectly honest. I don't have a ton of tones like in this bright orange in my collection to compare this to, and I've already exhaustively compared my copper eyeshadows on this channel, so I don't love this shade, but here it is just to show you. Okay, moving on into the green portion of this video, we have our work cut out for us. There are 6 more shades to compare, and I'm going to start with the truer greens in this palette. So this one High Class, this one Vodkatini, and this one Olive Lover. I'm going to start with High Class. Wow, that's beautiful. That's very, very true olive. Got a deep base, a high shine. I think I have tones like this in my collection already, but yeah, we're gonna see. Here's Vodkatini. I haven't used all the greens yet on my eyes, and yeah, Vodkatini, that's looking lighter than I expected. Interesting. And here's the shade Olive Lover. I have used this shade and I'm really into it. This is very murky. It has like sort of a bluish sparkle on top of quite a cool toned green. These look gorgeous together. Like, what a beautiful range of greens here. I love that. As you may already know, I am a green eyeshadow fiend over here. So I have a lot of comparisons to choose from. Starting with this more true olive, I think that's going to be the easiest to match. So I'm going to go into this shade Gabriel from Odin's Eye. I love Gabriel. It's very close to this. Like these could potentially be dupes. So interesting. Yeah, I don't love to have dupes in my collection, so that's again, like, it's kind of almost disappointing when something comes in and is like just as special as something that you thought was really, really special. So I don't know how I feel about that, but they're both really beautiful shades. I'm gonna go now into the shade Lime. It's very true, like lime, yellowy green, very high shine. This is from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette. I think that compares pretty well to this brighter lime. I mean, I knew that there was the possibility of getting dupes. I think like I'm considering myself to be a little bit of a collector when it comes to green eyeshadow because I'm interested in different nuances of green and I don't mind having like similar shades in different formulas, but I am finding that the Glamlite formula being very comparable to the Beauty Bay formula, it might not end up being different enough to ultimately like keep all of these shades. We'll see. But right now they're looking really, really comparable. If anything, this one might be like a truer green and this one might be more yellow. All right, let's see. Let's see how this one turns out. Yeah, okay, I think this one is going to be the closest comparison. This is Sage, also from the Earthy palette. Okay, we're doing all right. This one's different. This one's different enough. It's a bit deeper and it is less sparkly and it does not have that like blue shimmer running over it. And this one is quite special compared to this shade Sage. I also want to compare this shade Moss, which is like a cooler toned, like here you can see an emerald green, I would say. It's much brighter, a little bit more cool toned. Interesting. I will also just swatch this Rude Cosmetics Forest Green. This is a satiny formula compared to all of these. It's also got a little bit of a different undertone compared to this shade. It's a bit more blue. Yeah, okay, so this Glamlite shade is the one that's turning out to be quite unique compared to my collection and compared to these two. Moving on to this like tealish tone, this is called Crisp. This so far has been the one that I've used the most in this palette, and I really love this shade. It's in a tone that I really like, which is like this sort of grayish, brownish teal. I would almost say that this has like a mucky gray brown base, and it's almost like the teal is just in the shimmer. I hope that the swatch here is doing it justice. It's really interesting and beautiful. And when I put this on my eyes for the first time, I thought right away that it might be a dupe for this shade from Earthy that I also really love. This is the shade Frost. There's some nuance here, interesting. Yeah, I would say that this is greener and more brown. And this, it's more like it's the same, a very similar color of shimmer, but that shimmer sort of translates, it sort of translates into the base as well in this shade. So this is overall a little bit less complex, but the nuance of this grayish teal tone is just so beautiful. And I think in that it's a complex color just in its tone. I mean, they're both beautiful. They really are. This is a little more opaque as well than the Glamlite shade. I would say that this is more of like a mucky green and this is more gray, like a foggy seascape kind of teal compared to this one. I'm glad that there's nuance between those. I'm glad that they're different. I just want to swatch this shade, I think. Oh, I think this shade is the one I want. This is called Pickle, but I will also swatch this one, Hero. I think that this Glamlite shade, like it has something like these kinds of tones in the base. That's sort of like what we're getting in the base, and then there's like this teal color on top. Super interesting, super beautiful. And then I quickly also want to compare these to another shade from Earthy, which I keep with my blues. This is the shade Wit, and it has like similar tones of teal in it, but it's clearly very different actually from the Glamlite shade. Okay, finally I'm gonna move into these brighter teal aqua colors. I'll start with this one, Gin, and I will tell you right away, I do not have anything that comes close to this. This is so vibrant. Not something I plan to wear all the time, but I saw somebody on Instagram do a look where they just put this all over the lid and that was it, and it was such a beautiful, striking look, so I'd like to try that actually. Now to take on the rocks, and I should say that Gin is like, it's coming through really sparkly right here too. And so is On the Rocks. Yeah, this is a really beautiful formula. The closest thing that came to mind when I saw this in the palette was this shade Shield from the Beauty Bay Midnight palette. It's much more of a sky blue compared to these. It's funny because it looks so obvious compared to these two that this is blue. But in my mind I was thinking of this like a, maybe if not a mint green, then like a mint blue, if that's a thing. Now speaking of mint, I'm going to compare these to a couple shades from the ColourPop Mint to Be palette. This is the shade Minty. And this is one of the most impactful shimmers in that palette, I would say. Although it's still one of those like, you know, older formulas. Like I think this palette came out in like maybe 2019 or so. Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. And I really like the greener mints. Like I was interested in this because it had a nicer formula than the Mint to Be shadows that I was used to. but I think this is actually a better replacement for those shadows because it has that same green tone that I really like. Now I'm gonna swatch the shade Freshman, which again, because of the green in this shade, this has been my favorite shade in the Mint to Be palette, but it's very smooth, not very shiny. Oh yeah, okay, I'm happy about this. I think this is quite a close color match for On the Rocks, but On the Rocks is just way prettier and like more sparkly, more special, more beautiful. So I'm happy about that because I love this tone. I love this tone, but I was looking for sort of a new formula to replace this shadow in my collection. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so that's all of them. That's my shade comparisons and my swatches of these beautiful, beautiful shimmer shadows. I do plan to depot these palettes. I'm just really getting antsy to put these in some custom palettes. I would really like to keep these palettes because I think that they're just so like, there's something so satisfying about them. They're like a little hardcover book. So wish me luck. I really would like to be able to like unglue these and then magnetize the palettes. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and or entertaining and or inspiring. I'm excited to do some looks with these palettes. I will probably have some videos about that. So stay tuned, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I will see you very soon. Bye!